Hello, YouTube divers. This is Water Dive 122, and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. So, today we are going to be doing another album ranking. We're going to be going over ranking the 11 studio albums from one of the most iconic hard rock, heavy metal bands of all time, England's very own Def Leppard. So Def Leppard's a pretty interesting band. They've always been one of my favorite bands, especially dating back to my childhood. I have very fond memories of listening to a lot of their big hits growing up. And also, I saw them live in 2022 with Motley Crue, Poison, and Joan Jett. I caught them on the stadium tour in Atlanta, and that was a fantastic gig. Def Leppard killed it that night, in my opinion, at least. Um, and yeah, I mean, they're responsible for a lot of the biggest and most iconic and influential rock albums of all time. And they're definitely one of the best bands to come out of the 1980s hard rock and heavy metal scene. They are led by lead vocalist Joe Elliott, who's been with the band since pretty much the beginning. Then you have Rick Savage on bass, the primary founding member of the band. Then you have the guitar duo of Phil Collen and Vivian Campbell, or at least these days. Um, Back in the early days, it used to be Steve Clark and Pete Willis, but then on the first two albums, and then Phil Collen would join the band for Pyromania, and then Steve Clark would unfortunately pass away in 1991, a year before Adrenalize came out, and then after Adrenalize, Vivian Campbell would be in the band, and then Rick Allen's always been the drummer, of course, the one-armed wrecking crew behind the drum kit. He lost his arm, and he lost his left arm, I believe, in a car crash in 1984, and he's been on a custom built kit that it allows him to play drums with one arm ever since. So there's Def Leppard's had a huge history, and it's very well documented that even despite all these challenges that the band has had, they still managed to press on, make some great material. They do have 11 studio albums. I've seen some people rank like their compilation album from 1993, Retroactive, and their other compilation album from 2006, Yeah, or their cover album, whatever it is. Neither of those releases will be on this ranking. It'll just be the 11 LP studio albums. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started with the ranking. So, coming in last at number 11 is the 1996 album, Slang. Now, Def Leppard does not have a flawless discography. I love them to death. And when they're at their best, they are just one of the most untouchable bands in the world. But this album is easily the worst album they released. This is the first album to feature Vivian Campbell as a full-time musician. And yeah, you could definitely tell that the band was in a very awkward space at this time. I mean, obviously, they lost Steve Clark to a drug overdose and alcohol poisoning 5 years earlier. And a lot was changing in the mainstream music industry. The glam metal and the bombast and the highly commercial sound of the 1980s was no longer the talk of the town. It was now grunge and angsty and rebellious rock and roll music. And a lot of bands during this time period really either tried to adjust to the times and failed miserably, or kept doing what they're doing and became irrelevant. Def Leppard did the former category on this album, and it pretty much sucked. This is a pretty bad album, in my opinion. There's not a whole lot of songs on here that stick out. And, you know, when you're a band like Def Leppard, who basically just makes catchy song after catchy song on each album, that's kind of a cardinal sin if you think about it. Yeah, none of the songs are memorable. This is a very boring album, and That the album just, even at its fundamental values, I don't think it was executed well. Like production wise, this is a very ugly sounding album. There's no depth, there's no um beef, there's no sort of energy to be heard on this album. The band sounds pretty uninspired. And you can definitely hear that within the music and the memorability of these tracks. There are a few decent songs on here, like Pearl of Euphoria is all right. All I want is everything is pretty okay. Where Does Love Go When It Dies is fine. And then if I had to pick a favorite song, it would be Blood Runs Cold. Def Leppard are really no strangers to doing amazing slower songs, and this is one of them. It's not really amazing either. It's just like I don't really know. It's like I don't even want to call it a hidden gem in the rough because let's be real here, none of these songs are like anything to write home about. But yeah, I mean, I'll give Blood Runs Cold credit for at least trying to do something a little bit different. But yeah, overall, Slaying, easily the worst album in Def Leppard's discography. No question, easily. Yeah, screw this album. We're moving on. All right, moving on to number 10, we have the 2008 album, Songs from the Sparkle Lounge. Now, this album is most certainly better than Slang, like easily. But is would I call this a genuinely good album? Not quite. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there are some good songs on this album, like Only the Good Die Young, Bad Actress, Love, Go, the collaboration song with Tim McGraw, Nine Lives. And then my favorite song has to be Come Undone. This has one of the most unique choruses they've delivered since Adrenalize. Um, and possibly in their entire career. Like, I don't really remember any Def Leppard choruses being as unique as what we get in Come Undone. But in my opinion, once again, the bad kind of outweighs the good. There is a lot of filler on this album. And Joe Elliott, in my opinion, this is easily his weakest vocal performance. Um, yeah. He also wasn't very good on slang, but at least he had some standout performances on a few tracks. But on songs from the Sparkle Lounge, you could definitely tell that his voice is just not in the greatest shape. And, that happens with age. But fortunately, he would get better on the next two albums, which we'll get to. But yeah, songs from the Sparkle Lounge, a pretty mid album, pretty forgettable. All right, now we're moving on to another pretty unpopular darling. At number 9, we've got the previous album, X, from 2002. So this is like the most common least favorite album amongst many Def Leppard fans, and I could see why, if I'm being totally honest. But honestly, I think it's a pretty underrated album. I think there are a lot of pretty good songs on this album. You have Long, Long Way to Go, Love Don't Lie, Scar, Let Me Be the One, Torn to Shreds, which is a very dark song. Like, this is really where Def Leppard started to experiment with some more darker song timbres, like more atmospheric timbres, if you will. Then you have You're So Beautiful, Now, and my favorite track on the album, Unbelievable. These three songs really kind of call back to their classic 80s sound with a little bit of a modern spice to it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't think X totally deserves the hate. I can see why people don't like it. And there is definitely some filler on this album, but in the grand scheme of things, I would easily go to this album more than the previous two albums I talked about. So yeah, with that said, X comes in here at number 9. Number 8, now we're getting into the good stuff. We've got their self-titled album from 2015. So as I said earlier, from here on out, all these albums are at the very least good. And the self-titled album is one of those albums. Coming right off of songs from the Sparkle Lounge, the band really needed a kickstart, and in my opinion, the self-titled album gave that to us. Joe Elliott sounds much better on here, the production is way better, and the songs are much better as well. You have Let's Go, Wings of an Angel, Sea of Love, Blind Faith, which is one of their more darker and atmospheric cuts. Then you have Last Dance, which is one of their best ballads, or at least since the classic era. Then you have Forever Young, Man Enough, which has an awesome groove and bass line. And then you have Dangerous, and then you have my favorite song on the album, We Belong, which again has another one of the most unique sounding choruses of theirs. But yeah, overall, self-titled album, it's a good album. Warts and all. It's a very good album. But is it the best of their 2000s output? Well, let's see what album is next. So number 7, we've got the 2022 album, Diamond Star Halos. This is the latest album from the band, and I saw them shortly after this album came out. I remember listening to it on the way to the stadium where I saw Def Leppard. And I remember enjoying it much more back then than I did now. But make no mistake, I think there are some really underrated songs across this album. You have From Here to Eternity, Unbreakable, Lifeless, You Rock Me, SOS Emergency, which I've totally forgotten just how catchy of a song that is. Then you have Goodbye for Good This Time, another one of their more underrated power ballad-y songs. And then there are 4 tracks on here which I absolutely adore, and those are the first 4, believe it or not. You have This Guitar featuring Alison Krauss, who's one of my favorite female vocalists. I love Alison Krauss. And this is without a doubt one of my favorite ballads from them. Then you have Fire It Up, and then Kick, and then Take What You Want. These 3 tracks were the main singles, and all of them are great. Take What You Want in particular is my favorite song on the album, and one of my favorite songs from Def Leppard, like easily one of their best tracks. Also, these 4 tracks are pretty special because when I saw them, they played all 4 of these songs. So yeah, I guess my bias kind of shows through, I suppose. But make no mistake, Diamond Star Halos, it's a good album, warts and all. But along with this and the self-titled album, I think both of these albums are a little bit too long, and they're basically the same album. But I put Diamond Star Halos just a little bit higher because I do like some of the catchier songs on here, and I love the bombastic production on this record compared to the self-titled album. But yeah, Diamond Star Halos comes in at number 7. All right, now from this point onwards, all of these albums are great. So let's get into it. So coming in at number 6, we have the 1999 album Euphoria. I bet a lot of Def Leppard fans didn't expect this one to rise so high, but here we are. Yeah, I've always had a very nice relationship with Euphoria. I really liked how it returned to their classic 80s sound, the bombastic production, the heavy drums, the massive choruses and harmonies, and Joe Elliott's absolutely fantastic vocal performance. This is easily the best album they've done since Adrenalize, like no question, easily. And it has a lot of my favorite songs from the band. You have Demolition Man, Paper Sun, Guilty, Day After Day, To Be Alive, Goodbye, which is without a doubt one of their best ballads. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And then we get my favorite song on the record and the most popular song on the album, Promises. This is probably the most overplayed song on the album. And even though it's kind of like a Photograph ripoff, if you will, I still genuinely adore this track. Promises, another one of my favorite Def Leppard songs, like easily. And definitely my favorite Def Leppard song since Adrenalize. But yeah, overall, Euphoria is a very solid album. It does have some filler, as all the other previous albums that we've talked about have. But honestly, the good heavily outweighs the bad. Hence why I have it here at number 6. Now, these last 5 albums are all part of the classic era of the band. This is their first 5 albums and the period where Def Leppard just couldn't miss. So let's get into it. So number 5, we're going all the way back to their debut album, On Through the Night from 1980. So this is a very raw and young and rambunctious Def Leppard. This is very much a record that I can see like Iron Maiden doing, or Judas Priest, um, or even Saxon to an extent doing. This is a very new wave of British heavy metal album, and honestly, it's really cool to see Def Leppard in this type of style, in this type of sound. And the catchiness is still there. The riffs are sharp as ever, and Joe Elliott delivers a very unique vocal performance. His voice is really different after this album. But yeah, On Through the Night is a great album. You got tracks like When the Walls Came Tumbling Down, Overture, a nice little 7-minute mini epic to close off the album. It Don't Matter is one of the band's most underrated songs. Hello America is great. Answer to the Master is a cool track. Then you have Satellite and Wasted, one of their best songs. And then my favorite song has to be the opening track, Rock Brigade. This is another one of my favorite Def Leppard songs of all time, and it contains one of my favorite choruses from the band. It's super catchy, and it's so bouncy. I love it. But yeah, overall, On Through the Night, a fantastic album. Now, we're coming in at number 4. We've got the 1992 album, Adrenalize. So this is seen often as the last of their classic era. This is technically the first album they did after Steve Clark's passing. But Steve did write a few of the tracks that made it to this record, hence why Vivian Campbell did not join the band until during the tour of this album. Um, and there's some great songs on here, like coming right off the heels of Hysteria and in the early 90s where grunge was starting to take over. I think they really hit it out of the park with this record. You have Let's Get Rocked, which admittedly is kind of cheesy and corny, but it's got a cool groove to it. Then you have Personal Property, which is great. Stand Up is another underrated track of theirs. Heaven is one of their more popular songs, and it's freaking awesome. Then you have Make Love Like a Man, which again, like with Let's Get Rocked, it's kind of cheesy, but again, it's got a cool groove to it, even if I don't really care about the lyrical content here. Then we have I Want to Touch You, which is a pretty cool song, I will say. But then my favorite song on the album has to be Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad? This is the ballad on here. And my gosh, this is one of the most heart-wrenching ballads they've ever done, like without a freaking doubt. And this is another one of the tracks that I saw them play live when I saw them a few years ago. So there's that factor, anywho. But yeah, overall, Adrenalize, a pretty strong album. Definitely one of their best albums. But now we get into the top 3. And number 3, we've got High and Dry from 1981. This is the band's sophomore studio album and the final album to feature Pete Willis on the guitar before he was eventually fired from the band. Yeah, this album is pretty much seen as their breakthrough album, and for good reason. All of the rough and edgy and rambunctious atmospheres and textures from their debut are perfectly followed up here. And they also introduce their more bigger and bombastic sound that they would get famous for on the next 2 albums, which we'll get to. But yeah, make no mistake, High and Dry is a fantastic album, and one album that I just forget just how good it is. You have tracks like Lady Strange, Let It Go, You Got Me Running, No, 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 another Hit and Run, which is one of my favorite tracks from the band. Then you have the title track, High and Dry, Saturday Night, another one of my favorite choruses from the band. And then one of the best ballads of all time, Bringing on the Heartbreak. my favorite song on the album, and probably their breakthrough hit, if I'm being totally honest. Like, this is like the one song off of this album that they consistently play live. Like, they'll put Let It Go in there sometimes and maybe a few other tracks, but Bringing On the Heartbreak is a huge song. Absolutely adore this track. But yeah, overall, High and Dry, a fantastic sophomore album. Like, it's no BS. It's fantastic. Okay, and then these last two albums are like the big boys of Def Leppard's discography. These are the two albums that brought them into the household name that they are. So, where am I going to rank them? So, number 2, we have the 1987 album Hysteria. So, this was like the album. This is the most commercially successful album. This is their most popular album. And pretty much every single song on this album is just hit after hit after hit after hit. Like, when I say hit after hit after hit, I mean it. Like, the whole first half of this album are all mega hits of theirs. Tracks like Women, Rocket, Animal, Armageddon It, Gods of War, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Love Bites. Like, these tracks are absolutely massive, and they're all great songs. And then on the second side, you get more of the of their classic, of the sound that they would have on the first two albums, like Don't Shoot Shotgun, Run Riot, and Excitable. These tracks sound like they could have easily been on like On Through the Night or even High and Dry. And then my favorite song on their album has to go to the title track Hysteria, which is, again, another big hit of theirs, and it is one of my favorite songs by this band. Like, no BS. It is just a perfect song. I adore it. But yeah, overall, Hysteria, a masterpiece of an album. It deserves every single ounce of praise that it gets. This would be the last album to feature Steve Clark. Rest in peace, brother. But yeah, Hysteria comes in here at number 2. And so now we have finally reached it. Number 1, Process of Elimination. If you're a Def Leppard fan, then you know what album is left. And that is the 1983 album, Pyromania. I mean, of course it's going to be Pyromania. This album is just the definitive Def Leppard album. It's got the hits, it's got the raw new wave of British heavy metal and glam rock and metal mentality. It easily has Joe Elliott's best vocal performance. Everyone is just firing on all cylinders on this album. This is also the first album to feature Phil Collen on the guitars, replacing Pete Willis. And he does a fantastic job on here. But my favorite part about this album is the production. Like, I kid you not, Mutt Lange is, of course, one of the greatest rock and roll producers of all time. But in my opinion, this is his magnum opus. Like, none of his records sound quite as good as Pyromania does. It's got so much depth. It's got so much beef and bombast. It is literally unmatched. And he's made a lot of great records with bands like Foreigner, AC/DC, The Cars, etc. But make no mistake, Pyromania will always be my favorite record produced from him, without a doubt. And then, of course, you got the hits. Songs like Too Late for Love, Stage Fright, Rock Rock Till You Drop, Rock of Ages, Foolin', one of my favorite songs ever, Coming Under Fire, Action Not Words, Billy's Got a Gun, and then my favorite, Die Hard the Hunter, and then my favorite song on the album and my favorite Def Leppard song of all time, Photograph. I adore this song. I've heard it like a billion times, and I still love this song to death. But yeah, overall, Pyromania, masterpiece of an album, and it's easily my favorite Def Leppard album. It'll probably always be my favorite Def Leppard album, and it's one of my all-time favorite records. But yeah, So with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching my fellow YouTube divers. This is Water Dive 122 signing out. Ready to dive into more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.